in light of just the conversation the last few minutes then, so what is the intent during the review period in the EIR, and what level are you going to look at? I heard Dr. Goodwin, I heard you, Dan, respond, and maybe something afterwards, and this discussion about engineering, but I do think that you're looking at impacts of any project. You may not have 30% engineering or whatever percentage, but you need to know what the project is, how it's described, well enough to do the analysis and raise the questions and try to get answers to those questions during the review process. And so what will be the ISB, and I heard you saying in a role afterwards, but then what does that contribute to doesn't contribute to the environmental review process then? Is what you said, Dan. You were saying kind of, well, it may help the project afterwards. Well, that's a little late. In some people's summation, I would think.
You want to start?
Shall I start? Yeah. I'm sorry, we got a little confused here. The ISB review.
Maybe I did. You can say it's okay, but I just try to.
I think it's the ISB are tasked by the Delta Reform Act to review the draft environmental impact report, and it comments to both you as the council and the Department of Fish and Game. So we realized this was going to be a very major undertaking. So we put together this draft charge, which is in item 8B, that covers the statutory questions which the ISB is tasked to look at. And that's under section 3. But that is a fairly limited set of questions. And it was felt, I think, by Dan and Joe that the charge needed to be more expensive on that. We wanted to use the expertise of the Independent Science Board to take a look at that 30,000-foot level. And probably they, more than any other review group, can come in and comment, for example, on the analysis tools and modeling in a very comprehensive way with the expertise that they have spread across the board. So the process we've been through is that, and Dr. Collier is here, that we put out a rough draft, and they spent a lot of time looking at the draft EIR and what's on the web to realize what, in the time frame they will have available, what they can actually achieve at this high level. How can we use their time most efficiently? So the ISB has got a pretty good plan to look at everything that's in the charge that's there in attachment 1 of item 8B. So you're going to be getting that fairly comprehensive review at a high level of the really big issues. In addition to that, the short paragraph that appears in item 8A referring to engineering review was specifically to address some of the questions which had been addressed directly to the Stewardship Council staff. Well, this is how it started, about the constructability and the construction of the project.
What would be an example or two of the questions that you're talking about?
For example, one question there is it possible in the operation of these tunnels, if you have a closed conduit, a closed pipe, and you shut off the faucet in your house and you hear the bang of the pipes going, that can have a pressure wave traveling back through the pipe at very high speed. And the question was raised, actually soon after I came on, someone raised the issue, can this happen in this construction project? And if so, is it possible that that could induce seismic activity or destabilize levees and other things? So there are these big picture questions that we felt an independent engineering review could come in and say, yes, there's validity in these questions, or no, these are things which we can set aside. So that's how this engineering independent panel started to address some of those big questions. And then it got expanded a little bit following other discussions.
This is why it's good to have scientists looking at these things, because from a farmer perspective, I'd be worried about water hammer destroying the tunnel and collapsing it. You're thinking, will it cause an earthquake? So it's good to have that perspective.
Yeah, or both. And actually, and that was another very valid point. So if there was to be a failure under seismic, could that destabilize these poor soils, create levee collapse, and so on? And so it was these sorts of big questions just to get an independent view. The other thing that I would also say is if you get your engineering review early enough, and there were some good examples down in Louisiana on this, is that often you get some really good perspectives, and it's done in a non-combative way because it's still early enough in the process that good ideas can be included without a lot of cost to the process and going back and redesigning. And I think that was our original intent on the timing. But Dan, did I miss anything in the decision?
No, but I think, typically in a project, and the Bay Bridge might be a good example of this. The environmental documents are done with somebody says, what about this? And they say, well, we'll include adequate engineering measures to deal with that. And maybe there's an appendix or maybe there's not. So this would be a way to look at issues that have been raised that really are about engineering and the related impacts. Obviously, it's going to be the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau of Reclamation's engineers who are going to be proposing solutions. And this is a way for them, as with other complex engineering projects, to get an independent panel to look at those solutions and go, yeah, that'll work. Or, gee, have you thought about this? And I think that's why it would be, one of the ways it could be helpful, so we don't get into the situation where you see how the Bay Bridge did, where they were way late in the process and this was happening and it was like, oh, what are we going to do now? And so we've suggested this might be a way that those agencies could be proactive in bringing a review in early. But again, it really is, as with many of the review panels that the science program offers, would be a service that we would offer to them if they think it would be helpful.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this section?
So what I'm hearing is we're okay, move ahead with the scope